Picture this. You're sitting in a dimly lit government office, holding a stack of permits that could make or break million-dollar construction projects across the city. Your phone buzzes with another condescending text from your brother calling you a waste of space who'll never amount to anything. What he doesn't know is that tomorrow morning, his biggest business deal depends entirely on your signature. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Growing up in Denver, Colorado, I was always the odd one out in the Mitchell family. My older brother Ryan was the golden child, star quarterback in high school, business degree from Colorado State, and by age 30, he was running his own construction company with 3 business partners. Meanwhile, I was Marcus, the quiet kid who preferred books to sports, and ended up working for the city's Department of Building Safety after graduating with a degree in urban planning. Ryan never let me forget where we stood in the family hierarchy. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every casual family barbecue became an opportunity for him to remind everyone about his success and my supposed failures. Marcus is still pushing papers for the government, he'd announce with that trademark smirk, while some of us are actually building this city. Our parents, God bless them, tried to keep the peace, but it was obvious who they were prouder of. Ryan's company, Mitchell & Associates Construction, had its logo plastered on billboards across Denver. He drove a Tesla Model X, lived in a sprawling house in Cherry Hills Village, and constantly posted about his latest business conquests on social media. I, on the other hand, lived in a modest apartment in Capitol Hill, drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, and my biggest excitement was finding a new coffee shop to work from on weekends. The thing is, Ryan never bothered to understand what I actually did for the city. To him, I was just another bureaucrat, stamping papers and collecting a government paycheck. He had no idea that my position as senior permit specialist gave me significant authority over construction permits, zoning approvals, and building code compliance for commercial projects throughout Denver County. 3 years into my job, I'd worked my way up from entry-level permit clerk to heading an entire department. I oversaw a team of 12 inspectors and had the final say on permits for any construction project valued over $5 million. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was important, and I was good at it. I knew every building code by heart, understood the intricate web of city regulations, and had built relationships with contractors, architects, and developers across the metro area. Ryan's company had been growing rapidly, taking on bigger and more complex projects. What started as residential renovations had evolved into major commercial developments. They were bidding on shopping centers, office complexes, and mixed-use developments that were reshaping Denver's skyline. His 3 partners, David Chen, a shrewd financial strategist, Amanda Rodriguez, an architect with connections throughout the city, and Tom Bradley, a former city councilman turned business developer, brought complementary skills that made their firm incredibly competitive. The family dynamics reached a new low during my 28th birthday dinner. Ryan had just closed a deal for a $40 million mixed-use development in the Highland neighborhood, and he couldn't stop talking about it. "This project is going to put us on the map," he boasted, gesturing expansively with his wine glass. "We're talking about transforming an entire city block, retail spaces, luxury condos, office suites, the works." I tried to show interest, asking about the timeline and architectural plans, but Ryan cut me off. "Don't worry about it, Marcus. This is way above your pay grade. We're dealing with real money here, not whatever small-time permits you rubber stamp all day." The comment stung, especially in front of our parents and extended family. But what really bothered me wasn't the insult itself. I'd grown used to Ryan's condescension. It was the complete dismissal of my expertise and the assumption that my work was meaningless. After dinner, as we were walking to our cars, Ryan pulled me aside. "Look, I don't mean to be hard on you," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "It's just that you're 30 years old and still living like a college student. Maybe it's time to think bigger, you know? I could probably get you a job with our company. Nothing fancy, maybe helping with paperwork or coordinating with subcontractors." The offer was meant to sound generous, but it felt like charity. "Thanks, but I'm happy where I am," I replied. Ryan laughed, shaking his head. "Happy? Marcus, you're a government drone. You'll never make real money, never build anything meaningful, never leave a mark on this city. At least with us, you'd be part of something that matters."
That conversation haunted me for weeks, not because I believed what he said, but because I realized how little my own family understood about my career and accomplishments. They saw the government job and immediately assumed mediocrity, never bothering to learn about the real impact I had on the city's development.
Over the following months, Ryan's company continued to land bigger contracts. They were becoming one of Denver's most prominent construction firms, with projects scattered across the metropolitan area. The Highland development was just the beginning. They had proposals pending for a luxury hotel downtown, a massive warehouse complex near the airport, and a mixed-use development in the rapidly gentrifying Reno district. But success was changing Ryan, and not for the better. The more his company grew, the more arrogant he became. Family gatherings became unbearable as he regaled us with stories of his wheeling and dealing, name-dropping clients and city officials, and making increasingly pointed comments about my dead-end career. The final straw came during a family 4th of July barbecue. Ryan was holding court on the back patio, explaining to our cousins how his company was single-handedly reshaping Denver's urban landscape. When someone asked what I did for work, Ryan jumped in before I could answer. "Marcus works for the city," he said dismissively. "Basically a paper pusher. He approves permits for dog houses and garage additions." The table erupted in laughter, and I felt my face burn with embarrassment. "That's not exactly what I do," I started to explain, but Ryan wasn't finished. "The thing about government jobs is that they're perfect for people who don't have the drive or intelligence to make it in the private sector. No risk, no pressure, no real responsibility. Just show up, follow the rules, collect your paycheck, and wait for retirement." I excused myself from the table and went inside, ostensibly to get another beer, but really to compose myself. In the kitchen, I overheard Ryan talking to our cousin Jake, who worked in real estate. "I feel bad for Marcus sometimes," Ryan was saying, his voice carrying through the screen door. "But honestly, he's never going to amount to anything. Some people are just born to be followers, you know? They need someone else to give them direction and purpose. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. The world needs worker bees, too." Standing in that kitchen, listening to my brother casually dismiss my entire existence, something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger exactly, though there was plenty of that. It was more like a cold, crystalline clarity. Ryan had no idea what he was talking about, no understanding of my actual role or capabilities, and no respect for the work that literally made his success possible. I realized in that moment that Ryan's perception of me was not just wrong, it was dangerously naive. He was operating in a world where permits and regulations were just obstacles to overcome, minor annoyances handled by faceless bureaucrats. He had no idea that those paper pushers he mocked were the gatekeepers to his entire industry.
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The bid presentation was scheduled for September 15th, and Ryan was confident about their chances. At our mother's birthday dinner in early August, he couldn't contain his excitement about the potential contract. "This project is going to change everything," he told the assembled family, his eyes bright with ambition. "We're talking about transforming downtown Denver, creating jobs, attracting businesses, bringing in tax revenue. It's exactly the kind of visionary development this city needs." Dad asked about the competition, and Ryan waved dismissively. "There are 3 other firms bidding, but honestly, none of them have our combination of creativity and political connections. Tom knows everyone at City Hall, and Amanda's designs are revolutionary. We've got this locked up." I listened quietly, mentally reviewing what I knew about the downtown redevelopment project. The city had been planning this initiative for 3 years, assembling properties through eminent domain and working with community groups to address concerns about gentrification. The regulatory requirements were extraordinarily complex, involving historic preservation rules, environmental remediation,
and affordable housing mandates. Ryan continued talking about projected profits and expansion plans, but he hadn't mentioned the regulatory challenges once. Either his team was overconfident about navigating the approval process, or they genuinely didn't understand a bureaucratic maze they'd need to traverse. The beauty of this project, Ryan explained to our Uncle Frank, is that once we win the bid, everything else is just execution. Build according to the plans, stay on schedule, collect our payments. The hard part is getting selected. And like I said, we've got the political connections to make that happen. After dinner, I decided to do some research. Back at my apartment, I pulled up the downtown redevelopment files on the city's internal database. The project specifications were even more daunting than I had imagined. The winning contractor would need 17 different types of permits, including several that required unanimous approval from the Senior Review Committee. The environmental impact assessment alone would take months to complete, requiring soil contamination studies, air quality monitoring, and wildlife habitat evaluations. The historic preservation requirements mandated that any construction within 50 yards of the designated heritage buildings follow strict architectural guidelines. Most challenging of all, the affordable housing provisions required 20% of residential units to be priced below market rate, with binding commitments to maintain those price points for 15 years. Reading through the regulatory framework, I realized Ryan's team had probably focused their preparation on the financial and design aspects of the bid while underestimating the approval process. It was a common mistake among construction firms, especially those transitioning from smaller projects to major developments. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ryan, who regularly mocked my work as meaningless bureaucratic paper pushing, was about to stake his company's future on successfully navigating the exact regulatory systems I specialized in. His success or failure would depend on convincing people like me that his project deserved approval. September arrived with an unexpected complexity for Mitchell & Associates. I learned through Patricia that their initial permit applications contained some significant errors. The architectural plans didn't account for updated fire safety codes, the environmental impact projections used outdated air quality standards, and their affordable housing calculations violated recently revised city ordinances. These weren't intentional violations. They were the kind of mistakes that happened when construction teams focused on winning contracts without fully understanding regulatory requirements. In most cases, permit specialists would work with applicants to correct such issues, extending timelines but ultimately approving projects that met corrected standards. However, the downtown redevelopment project operated under accelerated review schedules. The city wanted to begin construction by January, which meant all permits needed approval by November 1st. Any delays in the application process could force the project into the following year, potentially affecting federal funding commitments and community development agreements. Ryan's team had until September 30th to submit their corrected applications. It was a tight timeline, but achievable if they recognized the problems quickly and worked efficiently to address them. Instead, I watched through official channels as Mitchell & Associates struggled with the regulatory requirements. Their revised applications, submitted on September 28th, still contained fundamental errors. The environmental impact assessment used incorrect methodology for calculating construction dust pollution. Their historic preservation compliance plan failed to address sightline requirements for heritage buildings. Most critically, their affordable housing projections violated state regulations that had been updated just 2 months earlier. Tom Bradley's political connections couldn't solve these technical problems. Amanda Rodriguez's innovative designs couldn't overcome regulatory noncompliance. David Chen's financial projections meant nothing if the city couldn't legally approve their permits. On October 5th, Patricia asked me to review the downtown redevelopment applications as part of my new role with the Enhanced Review Division. 4 construction firms had submitted bids, and preliminary permit reviews revealed significant issues with multiple applications.
I need your analysis of each proposal's regulatory compliance. Patricia explained, handing me 4 thick folders. The mayor's office wants our recommendations by October 15th. Any firm that can't meet our requirements will be eliminated from consideration. Opening the folders, I saw familiar names. Mitchell and Associates Construction was listed as applicant number 3. For the first time in months, I smiled. Reviewing Ryan's permit application felt surreal. Here was my brother's signature on official documents, his company letterhead embossed with gold foil, and his partner's credentials listed in impressive detail. Yet, the technical content revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of Denver's regulatory framework. I spent 3 days methodically documenting every violation, cross-referencing current city codes with their submitted plans. The environmental impact assessment incorrectly calculated stormwater runoff, potentially flooding neighboring properties during heavy rainfall. Their construction timeline ignored mandatory waiting periods between permit approvals and groundbreaking. Most damaging of all, their affordable housing plan violated both state and federal guidelines, which could jeopardize millions in government funding. The other 3 bidding companies had submitted applications with minor issues, easily correctable problems that wouldn't disqualify them from consideration. But Mitchell and Associates' application contained systemic flaws that suggested either incompetence or willful disregard for regulatory requirements. Professional ethics demanded that I treat Ryan's application like any other, without favoritism or personal bias. The Enhanced Review Division had strict protocols for evaluating permit compliance, and I'd built my reputation on objective, thorough analysis. Personal feelings couldn't influence my professional responsibilities. On October 12th, I submitted my preliminary report to Patricia, recommending conditional approval for 3 applicants, pending minor corrections, and flagging Mitchell & Associates for major regulatory violations requiring comprehensive resubmission. "This is thorough work, Marcus," Patricia said, reviewing my analysis. "The Mitchell & Associates application is particularly problematic. These aren't simple oversights. They suggest fundamental gaps in regulatory knowledge." She paused, studying the company name more closely. "Mitchell. Isn't that your family name?" "My brother's company. I've documented everything objectively following standard review protocols. Professional integrity in potentially conflicted situations is exactly why you're heading this division. Your recommendation stands." That evening, my phone rang. Ryan's name appeared on the screen, and for the first time in months, he sounded genuinely concerned rather than arrogantly confident. "Marcus, I need to ask you something. You work in permits, right? Do you know anything about the downtown redevelopment project review process?" The question caught me off guard. Ryan had never asked my professional opinion about anything. "What specifically do you want to know?" "We submitted our application 3 weeks ago, and we haven't heard anything back. Tom Bradley's contacts at City Hall are giving him the runaround, saying everything's still under review. But the other firms seem to be getting feedback already." I chose my words carefully. Large projects take time to evaluate. The review process is thorough because the stakes are high. "Right, but how thorough? Like, what exactly are they looking for? Are there things that could disqualify an application?" The irony was overwhelming. After years of dismissing my expertise as meaningless bureaucracy, Ryan was finally recognizing that regulatory approval might actually matter for his business success. Any application that doesn't meet city codes can be rejected. Environmental compliance, zoning requirements, construction safety standards, everything has to be perfect for a project this size. And who makes those decisions? Is it just one person or a committee? The Enhanced Review Division handles major projects. They have final authority on permit approvals. Ryan was quiet for a moment. "Have you ever heard of them rejecting applications for technical violations? Like if there were small mistakes in the paperwork?" "It depends on the severity of the mistakes. Minor errors can usually be corrected. Major violations that affect public safety or legal compliance are different." After we hung up, I realized Ryan still had no idea that I was the person evaluating his application. To him,
I was still just a low-level government employee who might have some general knowledge about permit processes. The possibility that his company's future rested in my hands had never occurred to him.
2 days later, Patricia called an emergency meeting of the Enhanced Review Division. The mayor's office was pressuring for faster decisions on the downtown redevelopment project, wanting to announce the winning contractor by October 20th. "We need final recommendations by Friday," Patricia announced to the 5-member committee. "I'm fast-tracking the review process, but we cannot compromise on regulatory compliance." I presented my detailed analysis of each application. The committee members, all seasoned professionals with decades of experience, agreed with my assessments. 3 firms received conditional approval pending minor corrections. Mitchell & Associates received a formal notice of non-compliance with 30 days to resubmit corrected applications. The notice was sent via certified mail on October 15th, with copies delivered electronically to ensure immediate receipt. Standard protocol required detailed explanations of each violation, recommended corrections, and clear deadlines for resubmission. Ryan's reaction was swift and explosive. My phone rang at 7 in the morning on October 16th, waking me from deep sleep. "Marcus, what the hell is going on at the city?" Ryan's voice was strained, barely controlled. "We just got some bullshit notice saying our application has major regulatory violations. This is obviously political. Someone's trying to sabotage our bid." "What kind of violations are they citing?" I asked, playing dumb. "Environmental impact calculations, affordable housing projections, historic preservation compliance. It's like they're making stuff up to disqualify us. Tom Bradley says he's never seen anything like this. Someone at City Hall has it out for our company." Ryan continued ranting about political conspiracies and unfair treatment, but his anger was masking genuine panic about his company's future. Mitchell & Associates had invested heavily in preparing for this project, hiring additional staff and securing equipment leases based on anticipated contract revenues. Losing the downtown redevelopment deal wouldn't just be disappointing, it could threaten the company's financial stability. "The worst part," Ryan said, his voice cracking slightly, "is that we don't even know who's making these decisions. The notice came from some bureaucrat named Marcus Mitchell in the Enhanced Review Division. Can you believe that? Some guy with the same last name as us is probably getting a kick out of screwing over our family business." The moment hung in the air like a suspended breath. Ryan had just told me that he'd never bothered to learn my job title, department, or professional responsibilities. After 3 years in city government, culminating in promotion to head a major division, my own brother didn't know what I did for work. Marcus Mitchell, in the Enhanced Review Division. "Yeah, do you know him? Maybe you could put in a good word. Explain that we're not some fly-by-night operation trying to cut corners. We're a legitimate company with an excellent track record." The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with Ryan alternately pleading for help and complaining about government overreach. He never once connected the name on the official notice with his brother sitting in a Capitol Hill apartment, holding the phone that would determine his company's fate. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and processing the surreal conversation. Ryan's dismissiveness had been so complete, so absolute, that even when confronted with evidence of my professional authority, he couldn't make the connection. But there was something else in his voice, genuine fear about his company's future. Despite his arrogance and condescension, Ryan had built something meaningful with his partners. They employed dozens of people, contributed to Denver's development, and had legitimately earned their reputation for quality construction. The regulatory violations in their application weren't malicious attempts to circumvent the law. They were mistakes born of inexperience with large-scale municipal projects and overconfidence in their ability to navigate bureaucratic requirements without expert guidance. For the first time since receiving their application, I found myself considering whether there might be a path forward that served both professional integrity and family reconciliation. The violations were serious, but they weren't necessarily fatal if addressed comprehensively and quickly. The question was whether Ryan and his partners had the humility to acknowledge their mistakes and the expertise to correct them properly. Based on his phone call, Ryan was still looking for political solutions rather than technical ones, exactly the wrong approach for regulatory compliance issues. I had 18 days to decide how this story would end. The next morning brought unexpected developments. David Chen, Ryan's financial partner, had scheduled a meeting with Patricia Hawkins to discuss the permit violations. Unlike Ryan's political approach through Tom Bradley's connections, Chen wanted to address the technical issues directly with the regulatory authority. Patricia briefed me before the meeting. Mr. Chen seems to understand that this isn't a political problem requiring political solutions. He's requesting a consultation to understand exactly what needs to be corrected.
Chen arrived at City Hall wearing an expensive navy suit, carrying a leather briefcase filled with revised calculations and architectural drawings. He was accompanied by a regulatory consultant from Boulder, someone with 20 years of experience navigating Colorado's construction codes. Ms. Hawkins, thank you for seeing me on short notice, Chen began, his manner respectful and professional. We've reviewed the violation notice, and we recognize that our application contains serious technical errors. Rather than challenging your findings, we like to understand exactly what needs to be corrected. Patricia gestured toward me. Mr. Mitchell heads our Enhanced Review Division and conducted the analysis of your application. He can walk you through each violation in detail. Chen's eyes widened slightly at the introduction, but he maintained his composure. Mr. Mitchell? Marcus Mitchell? That's correct, I confirmed. Ryan's brother, Chen said, more to himself than to us. He never mentioned, we had no idea you worked in permits. The regulatory consultant, a woman named Sarah Fleming, interjected smoothly. Mr. Mitchell, could we review the environmental impact calculation errors first? I've brought corrected projections based on current EPA standards. For the next 2 hours, we methodically examined each violation. Chen asked intelligent questions, took detailed notes, and demonstrated genuine understanding of the regulatory framework. Fleming's revised calculations addressed most of the environmental compliance issues, though they revealed cost overruns that hadn't been included in the original budget. The affordable housing component proved more challenging. Mitchell & Associates had committed to pricing 20% of residential units below market rate, but their financial projections assumed those units would still generate substantial profits. Current regulations required below-market pricing that would result in minimal or negative returns on those specific units. This changes our entire financial model, Chen admitted, reviewing Fleming's calculations. We budgeted for reduced profits on affordable units, but not actual losses. I'll need to discuss this with our investors. The historic preservation requirements were the most complex violation to address. The original architectural plans ignored sightline restrictions that protected views of designated heritage buildings. Correcting these issues would require significant design modifications and potentially reducing the overall building height. Amanda Rodriguez is brilliant, but she's never worked on projects with historic preservation constraints, Chen explained. She designed these buildings to maximize space utilization without understanding the heritage protection requirements. After the meeting, Chen shook my hand with obvious sincerity. Mr. Mitchell, I want to thank you for your thorough analysis. We clearly underestimated the regulatory complexity of this project. Your violation notice probably saved us from much more serious problems down the road. He paused, then added, and I also owe you an apology. Ryan talks about his family occasionally, and I'm afraid he's never given us an accurate picture of your professional accomplishments. Based on this meeting, you clearly have expertise we should have consulted months ago. That evening, I received another call from Ryan, but his tone had changed dramatically from the previous day's panic and bluster. Marcus, David Chen told me something interesting today. He said he met with someone at City Hall named Marcus Mitchell, who's actually the head of some major review division. Same name as you. What the odds? Pretty high, actually, I said quietly. There was a long silence. Marcus, are you telling me that you're the person reviewing our permit application? I'm the director of the Enhanced Review Division. Yes. Another silence. Even longer this time. When Ryan spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. How long have you had this job? I was promoted 6 months ago. I've been working in permits for 3 years. 3 years, Ryan repeated slowly. And I had no idea you worked in permits.
The conversation that followed was unlike any we'd ever had. For the first time in our adult lives, Ryan listened more than he talked. He asked about my education, my career progression, my professional responsibilities. He seemed genuinely shocked to learn about the scope and importance of my work. "Marcus, I need to be honest with you," he said finally. "I've been an arrogant asshole. I dismissed your job because I didn't understand it, and I never bothered to learn what you actually do. That's on me, completely." The apology was unexpected, but I wasn't ready to let him off the hook entirely. "Ryan, do you remember what you said at Mom's birthday dinner about me being a government drone who would never build anything meaningful?" "I remember," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I was wrong. Dead wrong."
You also offered me a job doing paperwork for your company because you thought I needed your help to have a meaningful career. Ryan groaned audibly. "Oh God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. I was condescending and ignorant, and I hurt you. There's no excuse for that." The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Ryan explained the financial pressure his company was facing, the investments they'd made based on anticipated contract revenues, and the potential layoffs if they couldn't secure the downtown redevelopment project. "We've got 47 employees now," he said. "Some of them have been with us for years, and they're counting on this project for job security. David Chen estimates we'll have to let go of 15 people if we don't get this contract." I asked about the technical issues raised in the violation notice. Ryan admitted that his team had focused primarily on design and financing, while assuming the regulatory approval would be straightforward. Tom Bradley kept saying his political connections would smooth over any bureaucratic issues, Ryan explained. "We thought that knowing the right people would be more important than understanding the actual requirements." "Political connections don't override building codes or environmental regulations," I said. "Those requirements exist for good reasons: public safety, environmental protection, community development standards." "I understand that now," Ryan replied. "David's meeting with your consultant opened our eyes to how much we didn't know. We're completely revising our approach." As the conversation wound down, Ryan asked the question I'd been expecting. "Marcus, I have to ask, given our relationship and the way I've treated you, what happens to our application?" It was a fair question, and one I'd been wrestling with since receiving their initial submission. "I'm going to evaluate your revised application by the same standards I apply to every project. If you address the violations comprehensively and meet all regulatory requirements, you'll receive approval. If you don't, you won't. That's all I can ask for. And Marcus, regardless of what happens with the permit, I want to make things right between us. I've been a terrible brother, and I want to change that." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about the conversation. Ryan's apology seemed genuine, born from recognition of his mistakes rather than just fear about his company's future. But words were easy. The real test would be whether his behavior actually changed. The bigger question was whether Mitchell and Associates could actually correct their regulatory violations within the remaining timeline. Chen's meeting demonstrated their commitment to addressing the issues properly, but the technical challenges were substantial. Even with expert consultation, they faced significant design modifications, cost overruns, and compressed schedules. 3 other construction firms had already received conditional approval and were finalizing their corrected applications. Mitchell and Associates was starting from much further behind with much more complex problems to solve. Professional fairness demanded that I give them the same opportunity as any applicant to correct their violations. Personal satisfaction suggested that watching Ryan struggle with regulatory complexities might teach him valuable lessons about respecting expertise he'd previously dismissed. The decision would ultimately depend on the quality of their revised submission and whether Ryan's newfound humility translated into genuine competence in navigating the bureaucratic systems he'd spent years mocking. The next week transformed into the most intense period of Ryan's professional career. Mitchell and Associates essentially rebuilt their entire application from the ground up, working 18-hour days with Sarah Fleming and 2 additional regulatory consultants to address every violation comprehensively.
Amanda Rodriguez's architect proved more adaptable than expected. Once she understood the historic preservation requirements, she redesigned the building complex to complement rather than overshadow the heritage structures. The revised plans actually enhanced the project's aesthetic appeal while reducing construction costs through more efficient space utilization. David Chen restructured their financial projections 3 times, finding creative solutions to make the affordable housing requirements economically viable. Instead of viewing below-market units as profit drains, he proposed a phased development model where initial residential sales would subsidize the affordable housing component. Tom Bradley, meanwhile, had to completely abandon his political networking approach. The regulatory violations couldn't be resolved through city council connections or backroom deals. They required technical expertise and meticulous attention to detail. For Ryan, the experience was simultaneously humbling and educational. He found himself learning building codes, environmental regulations, and zoning requirements that he'd previously dismissed as bureaucratic obstacles. More importantly, he began understanding why these regulations existed and how they served broader community interests.
On October 28th, just 2 days before the resubmission deadline, Ryan called me with a different kind of question. Marcus, I'm looking at our revised environmental impact assessment, and I want to make sure we haven't missed anything. Would you be willing to review our calculations informally? Not as my brother, but as someone who understands these requirements better than anyone else? The request was unprecedented. Ryan had never asked for my professional opinion on anything, and now he was essentially seeking my expertise to help his company succeed. I can't provide advance approval or preferential treatment, I said carefully, but I can answer general questions about regulatory interpretation. I understand. I just want to make sure we're not making fundamental errors again. We spent an hour on the phone discussing environmental compliance standards, affordable housing calculation methodologies, and historic preservation sightline requirements. Ryan asked intelligent questions, took detailed notes, and demonstrated genuine understanding of complex regulatory frameworks. At the end of the conversation, he said something that surprised me. Marcus, regardless of whether we get this contract, working through these requirements has made me a better business owner. I never realized how much thought goes into protecting communities and ensuring responsible development. The revised application arrived at my office on October 30th via certified delivery. The submission package was nearly 3 times thicker than their original application, with detailed appendices addressing every violation and comprehensive documentation supporting their corrected calculations. Sarah Fleming had included a cover letter explaining their methodology and highlighting specific changes made to address regulatory concerns. The environmental impact assessment used current EPA standards and included peer review from an independent consulting firm. The affordable housing projections met both state and federal requirements while maintaining project viability. Most impressively, Amanda Rodriguez's revised architectural plans turned historic preservation constraints into design advantages. Reviewing the resubmission took me 4 days of careful analysis. Unlike the original application, which contained obvious errors and oversights, the revised version demonstrated sophisticated understanding of regulatory requirements and innovative solutions to complex compliance challenges. The environmental calculations were flawless, using appropriate methodologies and conservative projections that exceeded minimum requirements. The affordable housing component included binding commitments to maintain below-market pricing for 20 years rather than the required 15. The Historic Preservation Compliance Plan actually enhanced protection for heritage buildings through strategic landscaping and sightline preservation. On November 3rd, I submitted my final analysis to Patricia and the Enhanced Review Division Committee. Mitchell & Associates had not only corrected their violations, but had produced one of the most comprehensive regulatory compliance packages I'd ever reviewed. "This is remarkable work," Patricia said, studying my report. "The transformation from their original submission is extraordinary.
someone clearly invested significant resources in getting this right. The committee meeting on November 4th was attended by the mayor's chief of staff, who wanted to observe the final selection process. All 4 competing firms had submitted compliant applications, but their approaches to regulatory requirements varied significantly. 2 firms had addressed violations with minimal corrections, meeting basic requirements without exceeding them. The 3rd firm had submitted excellent technical work but conservative designs that limited the project's economic impact. Mitchell & Associates had taken a completely different approach, treating regulatory compliance as an opportunity to demonstrate innovation and community commitment. Their plans exceeded requirements in every category while maintaining economic viability and architectural distinction. The Mitchell & Associates proposal represents exemplary regulatory compliance, I told the committee. They've transformed significant violations into comprehensive solutions that serve broader community interests. Committee member Janet Rodriguez raised an important question. This is impressive work, but shouldn't we consider the timeline? They required extensive corrections while other firms submitted approvable applications initially. It was a fair point. Regulatory efficiency was important for municipal projects, and firms that submitted compliant applications deserved recognition for their competence. However, I continued, the final submission quality demonstrates their capacity to handle complex regulatory challenges throughout the construction process. Major projects inevitably encounter unexpected compliance issues, and this firm has proven they can address such challenges comprehensively. The committee voted unanimously to recommend Mitchell & Associates for the downtown redevelopment contract, citing their superior regulatory compliance, innovative design solutions, and demonstrated commitment to community standards. 2 days later, the mayor's office announced the selection publicly, and Ryan called me within minutes of the press release, and for the first time in years, I heard genuine joy rather than arrogance in his voice.
Marcus, I don't know how to thank you, he said, his words tumbling over each other in excitement. This changes everything for our company. We can hire more people, take on bigger projects, really make a difference in Denver's development. You earned this, Ryan, I replied. Your team did exceptional work addressing those violations. That compliance package was among the best I've ever reviewed. But I need to be honest with you, Ryan continued, his tone becoming more serious. When I first found out you were reviewing our application, part of me wondered if family loyalty might influence your decision. Now I realize that was completely wrong thinking. He paused, then added, You held us to higher standards, not lower ones. You made us better by refusing to give us special treatment. That's real professional integrity. The conversation marked a fundamental shift in our relationship. For the first time, Ryan understood and respected my professional expertise. More importantly, he recognized that my work contributed meaningfully to the city's development and his industry's success. 3 weeks later, at Thanksgiving dinner, the family dynamics were completely different. Ryan spent most of the meal asking about my current projects and discussing regulatory trends affecting Denver's construction industry. Our parents seemed amazed by the change in our relationship, though they didn't fully understand what had caused it. During dessert, Ryan stood up to make an announcement. I want to thank Marcus publicly for something, he said, looking directly at me. His professional expertise and integrity helped our company succeed on the biggest project we've ever attempted. More importantly, he taught me to respect work I didn't understand and value expertise I'd been ignoring. He raised his wine glass. To Marcus, who's been building this city in ways I never bothered to appreciate. I'm proud to be your brother. The moment was everything I'd never known I wanted. Recognition, respect, and reconciliation with the family member whose approval had mattered most. The downtown redevelopment project officially broke ground on February 14, 2024, with a ceremony attended by Mayor Jennifer Walsh, City Council members, and local business leaders.
Ryan stood at the podium wearing a hard hat emblazoned with the Mitchell & Associates logo, addressing a crowd of nearly 200 people. "This project represents more than construction," he said, gesturing toward the cleared lot behind him. "It represents collaboration between private enterprise and public stewardship, between economic development and community responsibility." I watched from the audience as my brother spoke confidently about regulatory compliance, environmental protection, and affordable housing commitments. The transformation from the arrogant contractor who dismissed government oversight to a business leader who understood civic partnership was remarkable. After the ceremony, Ryan introduced me to the assembled dignitaries as my brother Marcus, who heads the city's Enhanced Review Division and taught our company what responsible development really means. The introduction was genuine, without the patronizing tone that had characterized his previous references to my work. Construction proceeded smoothly through the spring and summer, with Mitchell & Associates demonstrating the same attention to detail and execution that they'd shown in regulatory compliance. Their project management incorporated regular environmental monitoring, community liaison meetings, and progress reports that exceeded municipal requirements. By August, the partnership between our professional worlds had evolved into something neither of us had anticipated. Ryan began consulting me on regulatory aspects of other projects, while I gained insights into construction realities that informed my permit review processes. Our collaboration improved outcomes for both his company and the city's development goals. The success of the downtown project attracted attention from construction firms throughout Colorado. Ryan received inquiries about regulatory consulting services, leading to the creation of a new division within Mitchell & Associates focused on compliance management for complex municipal projects. We're becoming the go-to firm for projects that other companies considered too bureaucratically challenging. Turns out there's real competitive advantage in understanding regulations rather than trying to circumvent them. David Chen had expanded their business model to include regulatory consulting for other construction companies struggling with municipal compliance. Amanda Rodriguez was designing projects specifically optimized for regulatory approval while maintaining architectural innovation. Tom Bradley had redirected his political networking towards community engagement and stakeholder relationship building. The company's transformation reflected broader changes in Denver's construction industry. Other firms began investing more heavily in regulatory expertise, recognizing that compliance competency could differentiate them in competitive bidding processes. My role in the city government also evolved. Patricia Hawkins recommended me for promotion to Deputy Director of Planning and Development, a position that would oversee all municipal construction activity across Denver County. The promotion came with increased salary, expanded authority, and recognition as one of the youngest senior executives in city government. The new role meant working directly with the mayor's office on urban development strategy, coordinating with state and federal agencies on large-scale projects, and representing Denver at regional planning conferences. I found myself at the center of conversations about the city's future, contributing expertise that shaped decisions affecting hundreds of thousands of residents. In October, Ryan's company received a prestigious award from the Colorado Construction Association for excellence in regulatory compliance and community partnership. The downtown redevelopment project was cited as a model for responsible urban development that balanced economic growth with environmental protection and community needs. Ryan asked me to attend the award ceremony as his guest, and during his acceptance speech, he did something unprecedented. He publicly credited my expertise and the city's regulatory framework for improving his company's capabilities and project outcomes. 18 months ago, I viewed permits and regulations as obstacles to overcome, he told the assembled industry professionals. Today, I understand them as tools for creating better communities and more sustainable development. My brother Marcus taught me that government oversight isn't bureaucratic interference, it's professional partnership in building cities that serve everyone. The speech generated significant industry discussion about the relationship between construction firms and municipal regulators. Several other companies reached out to Ryan about collaboration models that could improve their own regulatory compliance processes.
For me, watching Ryan's public acknowledgement of our professional partnership represented complete vindication of my career choices and expertise. The brother who had once dismissed me as a government drone was now advocating for the value of municipal oversight to his entire industry. The downtown redevelopment project reached completion in March 2025, 6 months ahead of schedule and 12% under budget. The complex included 47 retail spaces, 86 luxury residential units, 34 affordable housing units, and 15 floors of premium office space. Environmental impact assessments showed the development actually improved local air and water quality through innovative green infrastructure. Most significantly, the affordable housing component had evolved into a national model for inclusive development. Rather than grudgingly meeting minimum requirements, Mitchell and Associates had created affordable units that were indistinguishable from market-rate housing, integrated throughout the complex rather than segregated into separate buildings. The project's success led to additional contracts for Ryan's company, including a mixed-use development in Boulder, a sustainable housing project in Fort Collins, and preliminary discussions about a major airport expansion that would be one of Colorado's largest construction projects in decades.
Our family relationships had fundamentally changed as well. Ryan no longer dominated family gatherings with boastful monologues about his business conquests. Instead, our conversations became genuine exchanges of ideas about urban development, regulatory policy, and the intersection of private enterprise and public service. Our parents, who had spent years navigating the tension between their sons' conflicting personalities, expressed amazement at our transformation. "You two have become actual partners," Mom observed during Christmas dinner. "It's wonderful to see you supporting each other instead of competing." The comment made me realize that our childhood competition had never been about actual achievement. It had been about recognition and respect. Ryan's business success had earned him family admiration, while my government career had been seen as settling for mediocrity. Now that Ryan understood and valued my professional expertise, the competition had evolved into collaboration. In January 2026, exactly 2 years after Ryan's company had nearly lost everything due to regulatory violations, we announced an unprecedented partnership. Mitchell and Associates would establish a regulatory compliance division headed by former city employees, while I would transition to a consulting role that bridged municipal planning and private development. The arrangement allowed me to maintain my commitment to responsible urban development while expanding my influence beyond municipal boundaries. Ryan gained access to regulatory expertise that would differentiate his company in increasingly complex construction markets. "This partnership represents everything I never understood about your work," Ryan said as we signed the agreement in his newly expanded offices. "You weren't just stamping permits, you were protecting communities and ensuring sustainable development. Now I get to be part of that mission instead of fighting against it." Looking back, the journey from family antagonism to professional partnership had required both of us to abandon preconceptions about each other's work and value. Ryan had to recognize that government oversight served important purposes beyond bureaucratic obstruction. I had to acknowledge that private development could contribute meaningfully to community welfare when guided by appropriate expertise and ethical commitments. The story that began with my brother dismissing me as a family loser had evolved into a collaboration that strengthened both our careers and our relationship. Sometimes the most satisfying victories aren't about proving others wrong. They're about helping them understand what you were right about all along. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.